She cheated her way through college. The words rang out like a gunshot. I was 3 steps from the podium, ready to accept the diploma I'd fought 4 brutal years to earn, when my sister's voice pierced the air. The auditorium froze. Phones lifted. Applause died. My body moved, but my mind splintered. Natalie, my older sister. My childhood idol turned biggest rival. She stood in the guest row, eyes locked on mine, her smile cold and triumphant. "You're a fraud, Ava. You don't deserve that degree." I kept walking. My palms were shaking, but I took the diploma, leaned into the dean, and whispered, "I need to speak with you, privately." He nodded calmly, knowingly, just as we planned. My sister thought she was exposing me. But the truth was, she had just exposed herself. And this time I wasn't going to stay quiet. The moment I stepped off the stage, the world turned into static. I heard nothing but the thud of my own heartbeat and the rustle of gowns behind me. My hands clenched the diploma like it was a life raft in a storm I wasn't prepared for. The rows of graduates parted to let me through. Some stared. Some whispered. Others avoided eye contact entirely, as if standing too close might implicate them in my shame. But I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back at Natalie. Because if I did, if I saw the smug look I knew would be plastered across her face, I might scream, or cry, or both. I found a quiet hallway behind the auditorium and leaned against the cool cement wall, willing myself not to crumble. My phone buzzed non-stop texts from Jessica, my roommate, Professor Lynn, who had supervised my capstone project, and even Mason, the guy from Philosophy 204 who hadn't spoken to me in 2 years. But I ignored them all. My thoughts kept spiraling back to Natalie's voice, her words. She cheated her way through college. It wasn't just an attack, it was a trap. One she had clearly been planning for weeks, maybe months. She'd known the power of that moment, that setting. Graduation. The place where everyone was watching. The one place I couldn't defend myself without looking defensive. And she had executed it perfectly. Except for one thing. She didn't know I had already uncovered the truth, that I had documents, witnesses, an entire file prepared for the dean's review, one that explained everything. The forged emails, the anonymous complaints to the ethics committee, the fake tutoring requests sent from burner accounts that nearly got me flagged for plagiarism, all traced back to one IP address. Hers. For years, Natalie had simmered with quiet resentment. I used to think it was just sibling rivalry, that leftover bitterness from when I got the scholarship she didn't, or when I was named valedictorian instead of her. But this was warfare. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold tile floor, gown pooling around me like a deflated balloon. My mind flicked through memories like shuffling cards, late-night study sessions, rejections, breakthroughs, and relentless hours in the psych lab. None of it came easy. I had earned every moment of this degree. And she tried to erase it with one sentence. But not this time. This time, I wasn't the little sister begging for her approval. I was going to be the one who told the truth and proved it. Because when Natalie declared war, she underestimated the one thing I had that she didn't. Receipts. Growing up, Natalie was the sun. And I was the satellite. She was beautiful, charismatic, effortlessly gifted, the kind of person teachers adored, relatives praised, and strangers remembered. At family gatherings, they'd say, "You girls are both lovely, but Natalie? She's going places." I didn't mind. Not at first. I was content orbiting her light, doing well in school, staying out of trouble. I even used to brag that my sister was going to be a lawyer, or an actress, or both. Natalie had that kind of shine. But the shine dimmed when I started catching up. Freshman year of high school, I beat her math scores. Sophomore year, I was accepted into a mentorship program she'd been rejected from. By senior year, I had overtaken her GPA, secured a full ride to Oregon State, and earned a place in the university's prestigious honors college. That's when things changed. Natalie's compliments started sounding like jabs. You must be lucky the committee liked your sob story. Wow, Ava didn't think psychology majors had to study this hard. I guess it's easy when you don't have a social life, huh? I laughed them off. I always did. I assumed it was insecurity, maybe even love twisted by competition. But over time, the remarks evolved into sabotage. The first warning sign came sophomore year, when my scholarship check was delayed. Financial aid blamed incomplete verification paperwork, even though I'd submitted everything on time. The delay forced me to borrow money for rent, rack up credit card debt, and take extra shifts at the tutoring center. Months later, my academic advisor pulled me aside. Ava, she said gently. We received an anonymous complaint accusing you of plagiarism in your behavioral neuroscience paper. My stomach dropped. That paper had taken me weeks. It was cited perfectly, reviewed by my mentor, and double-checked with Grammarly before I submitted. I defended myself successfully, but I was rattled. And that wasn't the last incident. There were emails I never sent, appointments I'd supposedly canceled, TA evaluations submitted in my name that I had no memory of writing. At one point, a student even approached me, saying, "You're the one who ghosted me after charging $200 for tutoring, right?" I had never met him in my life. Each incident was isolated just enough to seem like coincidence, just enough to make me question myself. But last fall, when I got locked out of my school email for suspicious activity, I knew something wasn't right. I started saving everything. Screenshots, logs, copies of every communication. And 3 months ago, I found the pattern. All the digital fingerprints pointed back to one person, Natalie. She'd been living at home since dropping out of grad school. She had access to our parents' Wi-Fi, our shared devices, even old login credentials I'd forgotten to change. That's when I stopped doubting and started planning. Because if Natalie wanted a war, she just declared it on the wrong battlefield. The first time I noticed the scholarship funds were short was just after winter break. I had planned out every dollar carefully: tuition, books, rent, food. But when I logged into my bursar account, the refund I was expecting wasn't there. Instead of $2,800, the balance showed just under $400. At first, I assumed it was a clerical error. I emailed the financial aid office, expecting a quick fix. But the reply came back sterile and vague. Due to recent adjustments to your account and prior disbursement activities, your refund has been reduced. Please contact Student Services for further clarification. Adjustments? Prior disbursements? I hadn't made any. What followed was 3 weeks of being bounced between departments. No one could give me a straight answer. One clerk even hinted that perhaps I'd already spent the funds and forgotten. I remember sitting on the floor of my tiny studio, heat off to save money, phone in one hand, ramen in the other, thinking, am I losing my mind? It wasn't just the money. It was the subtle gaslighting in every email, the slow erosion of control. I started combing through my bank history. That's when things got weirder. There were small, recurring transfers from my student account to a Venmo profile I didn't recognize. They looked like textbook purchases or club dues, each one between $20 and $75. Over time, they added up to nearly $900. Then came the bigger one. A $500 payment labeled laptop upgrade Ava C. Except I never bought a new laptop. And I never authorized that payment. It was a forged transaction, cleverly disguised. The shipping address was one town over, an apartment I didn't recognize. But I knew who lived there. Natalie's ex. The one she claimed to have blocked months ago. That's when it clicked. This wasn't random. This wasn't identity theft from a stranger. This was personal, intimate. Someone who knew my habits, my schedule, and how to cover their tracks just well enough. Natalie had access to everything: old shared drives, sync devices, even my Google autofill. She knew my password recovery answers better than I did. She probably still had the secret question answers I made in middle school. First pet? Favorite ice cream? She was building a paper trail designed to ruin me, little by little, while keeping herself invisible. But I had just uncovered the first breadcrumb. I changed every password that night. I closed the joint cloud storage. I reset my student ID credentials and alerted campus security. Then I made a spreadsheet. Every odd transaction, every fake login, every suspicious email. And I made a call. Not to the police, not yet. To someone who had helped a friend of mine once when she got scammed online. A private cyber investigator named Brandon Ng. I didn't know it yet, but that call would crack everything open. Brandon Ng didn't look like the kind of person who could tear someone's life apart with a laptop. He was quiet, clean-cut, and surprisingly young, barely 30. His office was tucked inside a co-working space in downtown Eugene, walls lined with whiteboards and recycled coffee cups. But from the moment I showed him my spreadsheet, his expression changed. "You've got a pattern," he said, eyes narrowing. "A careful one, but it's built on sloppier mistakes than your sister realized." It took him 3 weeks. 3 weeks of combing IP logs, metadata, browser fingerprints, and cloud backups I didn't even know still existed. 3 weeks of side-by-side signature comparisons, email headers, and cross-device syncing. And when he called me back in, he had a folder in his hand. A thick one. "I can link over 24 fraudulent actions directly back to Ava Carter," he said. "That includes 7 unauthorized logins into your student portal, 4 textbook purchases shipped to her former boyfriend, and multiple impersonation attempts using your student email alias set up through a shadow redirect." I blinked. "A what?" "She created a secondary Gmail account that mirrored yours almost exactly, just 1 letter off, and she used it to communicate with a faculty assistant, pretending to be you." He opened a printed email exchange. There it was. "Hi, Professor Langley. Sorry for the late notice, I'm swamped and won't make our tutoring appointment. Please don't mark me absent." It was signed, Ava. Except I'd never missed that session. I'd shown up. Langley had, oddly, not. Now I knew why. I felt sick. "She's not just trying to sabotage you academically," Brandon said gently. "She's laying groundwork for character destruction. In academic integrity hearings, one well-placed fake can seed enough doubt to taint your entire record." I stared at the evidence, my heart thudding. She hadn't just stolen money. She was stealing credibility, carefully, consistently, over time, so when she stood up at graduation and shouted, "She cheated," the lie would stick. Because some people might already believe it. "I have all of this backed up digitally," Brandon continued, "including screenshots of the fake accounts before she deleted them. But I recommend we act soon. She's already started erasing things." I nodded. "So, what's next?" He closed the folder. "You build your case, quietly, and then you choose your moment." I looked down at my capstone notebook sitting on my lap. It was a research journal on behavioral manipulation and narcissistic triangulation, my thesis topic, ironically. I'd written about people like Natalie, in theory. Now I was living it. "I know the moment," I whispered. He raised an eyebrow. "Graduation," I said, a bitter smile forming. "Let her think she's won." The night I confirmed it was her, I didn't cry. I didn't scream, or throw things, or call anyone. I just sat on the edge of my bed, laptop open, staring at the evidence Brandon had sent me in a secure drive. Natalie's digital fingerprints were everywhere, timestamps that aligned with her known locations, text patterns that matched her old blog posts, purchase histories that traced back to her phone's GPS. It was airtight. And still, I didn't want to believe it. This was my sister, the girl who used to braid my hair while we watched Gilmore Girls, the one who smuggled cupcakes into my middle school locker after I got dumped by Jason Wells in 7th grade. The same sister who once told me, "You're gonna be unstoppable someday, Ava." I clung to those memories like a child clutching a threadbare blanket. But the truth was, those moments had ended a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed when. Looking back, I could see the fractures forming as early as high school. The sideways compliments. The competition that felt less like fun and more like survival. But this was something else. It wasn't rivalry anymore. It was destruction. I opened the voice, recording Brandon had captured from her fake tutoring call, one of the few she hadn't realized was still recoverable. A female voice, confident and smooth, spoke casually into a disguised number. Just send the check to Ava Carter. Same spelling. She's too busy being the star of the psych department to notice anything missing. Her laugh followed. I slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, I drove across town. Not to confront her. Not yet. I went to see my father. He was home alone, our mom was at a dental conference, and I found him on the back porch, watering his tomato plants. He smiled when he saw me. Big day coming up, huh? You ready to walk across that stage? I hesitated. Dad, has Natalie ever said anything weird to you? About me? His face clouded. What kind of weird? I mean, anything about school, about me cheating, or not deserving my scholarship. He set the watering can down slowly. She's made some comments, he said after a pause. But I thought she was just bitter. Said you always had it easier. That mom gave you more. That you... He stopped himself. Why? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. But his eyes searched mine, and something inside him shifted. Is she in trouble? He asked, voice lower now. Not yet, I said. But she will be. Because Natalie had spent years weaponizing her bitterness, quietly poisoning the air between us, convincing even the people closest to me that I was the golden child who never struggled. But she was about to learn. I hadn't stayed silent because I was weak. I had stayed silent because I was patient. And patience was about to run out. By the time graduation week arrived, I had everything in place. My cap and gown were pressed. My speech approved and quietly amended waited in the folds of my diploma folder. My evidence packet, labeled and sealed, sat inside a plain black envelope tucked beneath my seat on stage. Brandon had even prepped a press contact, just in case things went nuclear. But more importantly, I had prepared myself. Not to fight Natalie, but to expose her on my own terms. What Natalie never understood was that true sabotage doesn't come from screaming in a crowded room. It comes from letting someone incriminate themselves in front of the very people they're trying to fool. That's what I counted on. That she wouldn't be able to help herself. And I was right. 15 minutes before the ceremony began, I spotted her lingering by the guest entrance in a white blazer and too bright lipstick, flanked by two former classmates she'd barely spoken to in years. A performance crew. She was charming them, smiling too wide, voice louder than necessary. She wanted eyes on her. I gave her none. Instead, I took my seat on the stage beside the other honors graduates, exhaled slowly, and locked eyes with Dean Whitaker. We had spoken the day before. I had shown him everything. Every fake login, every redirected email, every transaction Natalie had orchestrated in my name. His response had been measured, but clear. Let her speak, he'd said. Let her make her move. And I will know exactly what I'm witnessing. Now, he gave me the smallest of nods. Game on. The ceremony began like any other national anthem, inspirational quotes, the clatter of programs being flipped in laps. Then the names started. They were calling graduates alphabetically, which meant I would be one of the last. Perfect. As the W's neared, I felt my pulse accelerate. I reminded myself, this is what you've prepared for, let her come. And then, right on cue. She cheated her way through college. Natalie's voice sliced through the air like a blade. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted instantly. Camera flashes stuttered to life. Professors turned. Families froze mid-applause. The woman beside me clutched her pearls. The auditorium fell silent. I stood. I walked toward the podium, calm and precise. My heels clicked with rhythmic finality. Behind me, Natalie kept shouting. She doesn't deserve that degree. She paid her way through with stolen money and fake grades. But this time, unlike every time before, no one rushed to believe her. Because this time, I had come prepared. Dean Whitaker met me at the podium, smile composed but eyes burning with focus. I accepted my diploma, leaned in, and whispered. The envelopes beneath my chair, labeled A. 13. He nodded. It will be handled. I turned toward the crowd. Phones were still up. My sister's voice now trembled with desperation. Security was already moving toward her row, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She had done exactly what I hoped she would: collapse her own story, in front of hundreds of witnesses. And as I walked across the stage, for the first time in years, I felt taller. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped shrinking to make her feel bigger. The moment I stepped off that stage, everything shifted. Natalie was still yelling until security reached her. I saw two ushers approach her row from either side. She backed away, protesting, flailing her arms dramatically as if auditioning for a role only she believed she deserved. They didn't drag her out. They didn't need to. Her outburst had already collapsed under its own weight. And the witnesses? They weren't just families. They were faculty, alumni donors, and local press seated near the front for coverage. Every person who mattered had just seen a well-dressed woman unravel while I, her supposed victim, stood composed, silent, and devastatingly calm. Dean Whitaker met me backstage moments later, holding the black envelope I'd placed under my chair. She handed you the stage, he said quietly. I nodded. She always does. She just doesn't know it. I've already contacted the university's ethics committee, he continued, and forwarded everything to campus legal. But, Ava, this goes far beyond school policy. I know, I said. That's why I hired someone outside the system. Then let's talk tomorrow, he said. In my office. With your attorney. That night, the video went viral. A parent had live-streamed the ceremony on Facebook. Natalie's voice accusing me of cheating was crystal clear. But what stood out more was the visual. Me walking across the stage unfazed, silent, strong, accepting my diploma as her meltdown spiraled in the background. Comments poured in. This Ava girl didn't even flinch, queen. When your haters expose themselves louder than your GPA. Sister tried to ruin the moment, and ended up ruining herself. Natalie of course saw it too. The next morning, at exactly 10:03 a.m., I got a message from an unknown number. You humiliated me. I'm your sister. You owe me an explanation. I didn't respond. Instead, I met with Brandon and my new attorney, Chloe Ramirez, at Dean Whitaker's office. Chloe was sharp, fast-talking, and didn't flinch when presented with ugly family dynamics. She reviewed Brandon's report, nodded once, and looked at me. She committed digital fraud, financial theft, impersonation, and academic sabotage. That's 4 actionable charges. If you want to press forward, we can file today. I want to, I said. But not just for me. Chloe raised an eyebrow. She's done this to others, I said. Old friends, exes. Our cousin, she borrowed thousands from him last year. Told him it was for my medical bills. Brandon added. We've already started documenting that thread too. Chloe smiled. Then, let's make sure she doesn't get to rewrite anyone else's story again. The civil suit was filed that Thursday. I didn't tell my parents, not directly, but word spread quickly through the family chat, where Natalie's name had been noticeably absent for weeks. Aunt Carla called me that night. Ava, I'm sorry we didn't see it. We just assumed she was struggling, that she needed support. She did, I replied, but not the kind that required tearing me down. By the following week, the university had launched a formal inquiry. Natalie was banned from campus property after footage revealed her attempts to access faculty offices days before graduation. She had tried to plant physical copies of the fake emails in my student file. It was messy. It was desperate. And it failed. I met Natalie one final time. Not by choice but in mediation, where our lawyers discussed the financial damages she owed. She wore sunglasses indoors, refused to speak directly to me, and kept whispering to her lawyer like a child at a parent-teacher conference. When the session ended, she followed me into the hallway. You think you won? She hissed. I turned. Finally. No, Natalie, I said quietly. I know I healed. There's a difference. You always thought you were better than me, she snapped. No. I wanted you to be proud of me. But all you ever wanted was for me to stay small. Her face twitched, like she wasn't expecting honesty to sting worse than insults. You took everything from me, she whispered. I shook my head. I didn't take anything, I replied. You gave it all away. For spite. For ego. And now, I'm just taking it back. Then I walked away. The judge awarded me $75,000 in damages, mostly restitution for the stolen money, legal fees, and punitive charges related to identity fraud. But I didn't keep it all. I donated half to the Student Integrity Defense Fund, a new initiative the university launched after reviewing my case to help students defend themselves against false academic accusations. Dean Whitaker invited me to speak at its launch ceremony. I didn't talk about Natalie. I talked about truth, and how sometimes, telling it isn't about being believed, it's about freeing yourself from the need to be. 6 months after the lawsuit, my life was quiet. Not perfect, not cinematic. Just quiet. No more late-night panic attacks, no more checking over my shoulder for the next sabotage, no more shrinking myself to fit into Natalie's shadow or trying to decode our family's silence. I had finished my degree. Officially. The university even invited me back for a closed ceremony to reissue my diploma, this time, with no interruptions. My name was called. I walked the stage again. But this time, Natalie wasn't there. And this time, the applause didn't feel fragile. It felt earned. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of Corvallis, nothing fancy, but full of sunlight. I painted the kitchen yellow and bought cheap furniture I actually liked. I adopted a cat named Piper who insisted on knocking every mug off every surface. I didn't mind. For the first time, my life belonged to me. And it didn't have to be impressive to be enough. Still, I couldn't shake one feeling, that this couldn't all end with a check and a speech, that everything Natalie tried to destroy should become something more than just a lesson. Something useful, something generous. So I emailed Dean Whitaker again. Subject: Proposal for Scholarship Fund. I told him I wanted to start small, just one student per year, someone who had been falsely accused, or gaslit by family, or sabotaged in ways no policy handbook could anticipate. He wrote back in one line, "Name it and it's yours." I called it the Carter Second Start Fund. Yes, I kept our last name on it. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't erasing where you came from. It's reclaiming it and making it mean something better. The first scholarship went to a transfer student named Layla, whose aunt had stolen her FAFSA login to apply for loans in her name. She dropped out for a year, worked at a diner, slept in her car. Now, she's back on campus, studying sociology. When I met her in person, she hugged me like she already knew me. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "You never were," I told her. "Mom never called." She sent one letter, a rambling, vague apology wrapped in excuses. "Your sister's always been complicated. You should have told us sooner. We didn't know how bad it was." I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because I no longer needed her to understand. I didn't need permission to move forward. Natalie, on the other hand, disappeared from the public eye. She deleted her socials. Moved back in with a friend in Idaho, according to distant family chatter. Occasionally I'd hear a rumor she was applying to nursing school or thinking about writing a memoir, but nothing stuck. I let her fade. She'd stolen enough attention already. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes, it's setting a boundary so firm the past can't claw through. Sometimes, it's walking into a room, shoulders straight, and knowing you built every inch of this life with your own damn hands. And no one gets to take it from you. Not anymore. One Sunday morning, I sat on my porch with Piper on my lap, warm coffee in hand, and thought of everything it took to get here. Every night I doubted myself. Every fake email. Every whispered accusation. Every moment I wanted to give up but didn't. I remembered that day on stage. My sister's voice, sharp with bitterness. My voice, steady with truth. And I smiled. Because I didn't just survive her sabotage, I turned it into soil. And from that soil, I grew a life. One rooted in strength. One watered with peace. One filled with light she could never steal again.